Imagine being 25 years old. You're not old. You're not supposed to be falling apart. You might be in great shape. You might train 5 days a week, track your food, and look like the picture of health. But behind closed doors, you're dealing with something you thought wouldn't happen until your 60s. You can't get hard, or you can't stay hard. And in that moment, your brain doesn't say, "Let's troubleshoot." It says, "What is wrong with me? Am I broken? Is this going to be my life now?" Here's the shocker. If you're dealing with erection problems in your 20s, you are not some rare anomaly. You're part of a trend that researchers and clinicians have been tracking for years. And today we're going to break down the most realistic, science-based reasons this is happening to young men without hype, without shame, and without turning it into a conspiracy. Now let's talk about what's actually happening. For a long time, erectile dysfunction was framed like an older man's problem, but data suggests it's showing up in younger men more than people think. In a large US study of sexually active men ages 18 to 31, about 1 in 9 reported mild erectile dysfunction, and a smaller but significant portion reported moderate to severe symptoms. And when researchers looked at men showing up for care, one major study found that about 1 in 4 men seeking help for erectile dysfunction was under 40, meaning this is not just a senior citizen issue anymore. So no, this isn't all in your head in the dismissive way people say it. But also yes, sometimes it's in your head in a very real biological way, because erections aren't just about mood, they are a full-body event. Here's the simplest way to understand it. An erection requires 5 systems to cooperate. 1. A brain that can focus and feel safe enough to switch into arousal. 2. Nerves that can send the signal. 3. Blood vessels that can deliver strong blood flow. 4. Hormones and chemistry that support libido and function. 5. A body that isn't stuck in stress mode. If any one of those systems is disrupted, you can get erectile dysfunction. So instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" the better question is, which system isn't cooperating? In young men, erectile dysfunction usually falls into 2 big buckets. Bucket 1 is software: stress, anxiety, performance pressure, depression, relationship strain, overstimulation. Bucket 2 is hardware: sleep loss, low conditioning, early metabolic issues, vaping or smoking, alcohol, medication side effects, hormone problems, vascular issues. Most young men have some mixture of both. Let's start with the software, because for many young men the first driver is in the brain. For most of human history, sexual arousal was a real-life event, tied to a real person, real risk, real pacing, real connection. Then modern high-speed internet showed up, and suddenly explicit adult content became unlimited, hyper-stimulating, and available on demand. Some researchers describe this as a supernormal stimulus, an artificial version of a natural reward that can be more intense than real life. Now, to be accurate and honest, the research here is mixed. Not every study finds a simple direct cause and effect relationship between explicit content and erectile dysfunction. But many clinicians still see a common pattern in certain men. When arousal is trained on novelty, intensity, and speed, real-life intimacy can feel slower, less controllable, and less stimulating by comparison. So the issue isn't always the body. Sometimes the hardware works, but the brain's calibration is off. And if you've ever noticed that things work better with screens but not as well with a real partner, that can be a clue that the problem may be more neurological and psychological than hormonal. Now add the second software driver: performance anxiety. If your brain starts fearing failure, your body shifts into threat mode. Threat mode and arousal mode don't run well at the same time, because erections require a calm parasympathetic state, rest and connect. But anxiety activates fight or flight, so you can get stuck in a loop. One bad night, then fear, then more pressure, then worse performance, then more fear. That loop is brutal, and it's also treatable, often with education, communication, therapy, and sometimes medical support. Now let's talk about the hardware, the biological side. Here's a line most young men need to hear. Erections are a blood flow event. They are dependent on vascular function, which is why erectile dysfunction is not just a bedroom problem. In some cases, it can be an early signal of cardiometabolic issues. This does not mean you should panic at 25. It means persistent ED is a signal worth respecting, especially if you also have risk factors like high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, smoking, obesity, or a strong family history. So what are the major hardware drivers that can hit young men? Number 1. Sleep destruction. Testosterone production and sexual function are tied to sleep quality and circadian rhythm. In controlled research, restricting sleep to about 5 hours a night for just 1 week lowered testosterone by roughly 10 to 15% in healthy young men. That's not just feeling tired, that's a measurable physiological hit. If you're sleeping badly, you're asking your sexual function to perform without the recovery system that supports it. Number 2. Sedentary life and poor conditioning. A lot of men are strong in the gym but sedentary the rest of the day. 10 hours sitting, low daily steps, minimal cardio, stress breathing, tight hips, tight pelvic floor, poor circulation, and again, blood flow matters. You don't need to become a marathon runner, but your baseline circulation and conditioning matter more than most men realize. Number 3. Metabolic friction. Blood sugar problems, insulin resistance, visceral fat, and inflammation are not just future issues. They can affect endothelial function now, and endothelial function is what allows blood vessels to respond properly. Now add substances. Nicotine and vaping can affect blood vessel function and nervous system tone. Heavy alcohol can impair arousal, sleep, and hormone signaling. Cannabis affects people differently. Some feel it helps desire, others notice anxiety or inconsistent function. Stimulants can increase anxiety and tighten the system. Also, medication effects are real. Some medications commonly used by young men can affect sexual function, including certain antidepressants and certain hair loss medications. This is not a message to quit your meds, it's a message to stop suffering in silence. If you notice changes after starting a medication, that's a conversation for your clinician, not something you just push through. Now, what about hormones? Yes, hormones can matter, but here's a key point. A lot of 25-year-old erectile dysfunction is not explained purely by low testosterone. Testosterone often affects desire, mood, energy, and baseline arousal. But erection reliability often depends heavily on nervous system state and blood flow. So if you chase testosterone as the only answer while ignoring sleep, stress, conditioning, metabolic health, or stimulation habits, you may treat the wrong system. That's why evaluation matters. Now let's get practical. Here's a non-hype roadmap. First, define the pattern. Is it occasional or consistent for weeks to months? Is it only with a partner or also alone? Is it difficulty getting an erection or staying hard? Do you still wake up with morning erections? Patterns matter because they hint at which system is involved. Second, get evaluated when it's persistent or worsening. If ED is new, persistent, or worsening, especially if you have symptoms like pain, curvature, numbness, urinary symptoms, or major changes in libido, get checked. A clinician may screen blood pressure, diabetes risk, cholesterol, thyroid issues, medication effects, depression or anxiety, and sometimes testosterone based on symptoms. Third, rebuild the foundations. If you want the highest return changes, focus on 3 pillars: sleep, consistent schedule, enough hours, darker nights, less late light, movement, strength training plus cardio plus daily steps, stress, real downshifts, therapy if needed, breath work, fewer stimulants, less late night scrolling, and real social connection. Fourth, address screen-trained stimulation if it applies. If explicit adult content and high novelty have become a primary driver of arousal, some men benefit from taking a real break to let arousal reset to real life again, especially if they notice a clear pattern. If performance anxiety is a major factor, sex therapy can be extremely effective. Fifth, don't self-prescribe. Some men take ED medications casually or recreationally, sometimes mixed with alcohol or other substances. That can create risky behavior patterns and can mask the real cause. Prescription options exist and can be appropriate for some people, but they have contraindications and should be used under medical guidance. And finally, keep natural approaches grounded. Lifestyle is the foundation. Some supplements and food-based approaches have evidence in certain contexts, but don't turn this into a supplement scavenger hunt. If you're sleeping 5 hours, stressed all day, sedentary, and overstimulated, no capsule is going to outwork your environment. So here's the calm conclusion. Erectile dysfunction at 25 is not a punchline. It's not proof you're broken. It's a signal. Sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's conditioning, sometimes it's blood flow, sometimes it's medication, sometimes it's a stack of modern factors. But the main point is this: you're not the only one, and you're not doomed. Don't ignore the signal. Get curious, get evaluated if you need to, and rebuild the system, because your 20s are not supposed to feel like a slow shutdown.